Our final talk in this global section is from Dr. Andreea Calcan, Program Management Officer at the United Nations Environment Program.
Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to speak. And now I'm basically the face around what you already heard before, OGMP. Okay, so that people are also hearing me properly. So basically, I'm representing OGMP, Mars, and all the elements that you already heard about the United Nations, what we do. So I'm working at the International Methane Emissions Observatory, and I will show you a little bit about what we do. I will not talk about the need of filling the gap in knowledge what we all assess today here. We have a lot of talks about that. But I think what's important for everyone to notice is what's IMEO. So IMEO is the International Methane Emissions Observatory. It's an initiative, a project of the United Nations Environmental Program, which was basically created to fill a gap which is critical. And all this is about open, reliable, and actionable data. It means that we need to understand and to fill all these puzzle pieces that are still missing in this methane environment. And how we do it? We have three main components. One is about science. We all understood that we need science to understand what's going on there in the atmosphere, what's happening with this methane. But then we also do work on transparency, and this is basically translated to the Oil and Gas Methane Partnership 2.0. You may wonder why 2.0. It was also version of 1.0, where the United Nations, way back years ago, 10, 15 years ago, realized that methane is a problem, and they needed to start to do something. So they engaged the industry, talked to them, built trust, and created a partnership on a voluntary basis to help to mitigate methane emissions from the oil and gas industry. Why oil and gas industry? Because this was the low-hanging fruit, right? So this is just tightening some screws, doing some stuff, and you solve the problem. As we evolved and learned, and you will see, it's not only anymore about oil and gas sector. It's developing and it's growing. Then the last component is about implementation. You talked a lot about capacity building and training need and sharing the knowledge and experience. What we do, we have a training session that we deliver in countries to governments and companies that need this training. And it starts with why climate change, why methane? Why does it matter up to how to use satellite data? For most of us in the room, this is like daily daily news reading. But for some companies, you get the question, why climate change? Why should we care about it? It's sad, but it's the true reality, right? That's the place where we need to focus and to work and help them. But we also do training and capacity building by doing the science studies, right? And I will show you examples of that. But when we go into a country and do a study, it's not just flying in scientists out of Europe or the US, where people, there are science groups that know how to do it. We fly them in a country, they measure and they fly out. They just disappear and then they publish some data. No, we involve the local scientists. We engage with the younger scientists. We train them. They work side by side with the more knowledgeable, let's say, senior scientists in the team. They publish data and they remain engaged all over the work, over the years as the study goes on. And then you will see over the years that they start their own work there. So we build a small community that's starting growing into the field. Now, maybe you saw the slide, and I don't go in the numbers because there are different studies showing different numbers on the Permian, which is a complicated element. But the main message out of this kind of graphs, and I will show you also the European version of it, so that you don't say it's just biased by the US and the Permian. It's which number do we trust? And we heard a lot today about which number is true, right? When we go and show this graph to politicians, to governments, they are puzzled because they think that their inventory reporting due to UNFCCC or something is right. They are close to reality because they don't understand all the process that's behind, where the numbers are coming from. When you start explaining and digging into numbers, they would understand that they maybe don't have the truth, right? So this is one example, and I will, as I said, I will not go into the numbers. What do we do exactly? So we collect data from all OGMP companies that are sharing with us information about their production and assets all over the world, right? Depending on the level that they are labeled. You already heard we have 5 levels of labeling this partner companies. Then we do our science measurement studies. We collect data from inventories, national inventories, and also we integrate satellite data. We do a global view on this data. We try to reconcile and identify knowledge gaps that we then again address through studies or other work that we engage through. And then we come up with certain products. First of all, we aim to make it soon really public on the website so that every person in the world can click and see what methane emissions are over the world. So we create a global public database with empirical emissions data, which will have a unique level of quality and uncertainty labeled data, which is now not existing. There is not such a unique place where you can go and just look for this data. We have our annual methane report, which is containing all the labeling of the company, so you can always see what's the development of the oil and gas methane partnership companies and what levels do they achieve. Sometimes they go up, sometimes they go down, depending on how they've done over the year. But then also we work together with the European Commission to develop this methane supply index that should help the European Commission and the European Union to achieve their goals. Speaking about OGMP, just to have an idea of where we are now, it's the number. I should, daily update this number here. It's now today. It's 115 companies all over the world, and you see here a little bit the spread. So of basically what's important are the orange and the light blue areas, but for us, it's also important the dark blue areas, which are not yet covered. And we aim to work there and to convince their companies, and Erin was part of this group, to convince companies and governments and all the stakeholders around those countries to embrace a standard and to open up and to be open and transparent. Right? The important element here of OGMP is that the companies that are joining in are not only reporting the assets, for example, operated in their base country, let's say in the US, but they are also required to report their assets operated in other countries. Then we have, and you heard from Claire earlier today, the methane alert and response system. We are not waiting just that the data is coming to us. We are also looking who is doing what and what happens. Now, you may know that satellite data is limited in what you can see with data, but high emitting events can easily be spotted now in the world. And we have a 4-component concept of our Mars system, which is basically we detect an attribute. So we try to locate as good as possible a high emitting event. Then we notify and engage governments. And this is done not only with the oil and gas partnership companies. We hear that very often. It's really, take it as it is. We will notify all governments. If you are an OGMP partner, you will be notified together with your government, right? You will not find it out by your government. If you are not an OGMP partner company, your government will be notified and they need to find you and report to us back that they found the operator associated to the emitting event and what measures were taken. So then we look how this process is going, right? If measurements measures are taken, if the event stops or still continues, we try to learn out of these events. We try to engage with the company to understand what happened, why did it happen. Sometimes they know about the event, sometimes not. And then we try to it's not naming and shaming, right? But it also needs to be public. So we then publish this data, this information about the event and the status of it. Is it still a meeting? Is it still ongoing? Was it solved? What was the reason? Mars is now operational. It's in a pilot phase where certain countries are piloting this. Basically, we work with the countries and make them understand. But we also do a training. So when we send out the first time on an event out, we don't just send an email and say, good luck, find it, or that's the problem. We always talk to the government or to the companies or to both and try to teach them how to react when we send this kind of alerts, also for future actions. And then I mentioned the oil and gas studies. Now here is just a glimpse of places in the world where we go and do. Currently we have ongoing 32 studies all over the world. Here are some main ones. So the main focus is on the oil and gas sector, as I said, but we also focus, and you know, I think I just heard once today, the coal sector. What about the coal emissions related to metallurgical coal methane emissions? We are looking now into Australia and Poland, two of the main countries on Earth that do produce metallurgical coal. We just finished a big campaign in Australia, and this summer we had a second campaign in Poland. But we will also do a first study on abandoned coal mines in India. Then we also look on waste, and this is a future topic. There was a question today morning, in 5 years or 10 years, where we are going to. It's not only about the oil and gas sector. The oil and gas sector now moves on, and you know, it's approaching a level of maturity, I would say. Next level is to tackle the other sectors. Waste, especially agriculture, wastewater, and other sectors. And we are coming now with a new concept that we just started to pilot. It's a so-called baseline studies, cross-country, cross-sector studies, where we will go into a country, we will measure across all the sectors, coal, waste, oil and gas, agriculture, and assess the emissions, work with the governments to support them to mitigate emissions and to build, perhaps, on existing MRV systems, or help them to improve their reporting system. And I promised to show you a picture similar to the US version, but this is Romania. You heard Romania is one of the few producing countries of oil and gas in Europe. And what you see here, this is one of the biggest studies that we ever conducted. There were over 20 research teams involved with a lot of flights and a lot of measurements over 2 years. Unfortunately, COVID was in the middle of the campaign, so we had 1 year in the south looking more on the oil sector, and then another year in the center of the country where it's mostly gas or only gas dominated. And what we've done, so we've done component level emissions measurements, we've done facility level and also basin level. So we've really done the mass balance flights and all of that, and ground surveys and on-ground work. We had also private service providers that joined in the campaign and measured with their independent system. And I have to mention, Romania didn't sign the Global Methane Pledge. And at that time, none of the companies, major producer, were OGMP members. This changed now. We have several companies that joined in. The main oil and the main gas producer, Romgaz, did join in this year. So they started to embrace after the studies. And what you can see here is that Romania underestimates, and this is only the oil sector, right? The oil measurements. We are not yet ready to present the gas component. And they also underestimate highly their emissions compared to the country initial reporting. Why was this and why we choose Romania? It's basically because we saw a huge change in emissions reported under the UNFCCC from 1 year to the other. It was like half of the emissions. And we said like, okay, either the atmosphere really sees something or something happened, right? What did we miss? And then there were changes in production, that's true, but then the development or the movement of the country from developing to developed country, as it became a European Union member, changed their reporting mechanism. And suddenly emissions vanished half to the atmosphere, but not in the reporting, right? So now we are working with the government there, and we engaged, and they built a team, a working group, national working group on methane to understand these results and embrace these results, and also adapt for and brace for impact for the new EU regulation, basically. And my last slide, because I know there is some coffee waiting outside or some refreshments. I wanted you to show what we are doing and just to open up your appetite to watch out for our upcoming publication, which is looking into the Nord Stream event. So you may all remember the Nord Stream pipelines that were blown up. We had this huge event where someone said that there is an elephant in the room. Nord Stream told us or made the public aware about methane emissions. Problem is that no one understands that we daily have an elephant in the room, because what Nord Stream represented was 1 day of emissions globally, right? So this is a comparison. How much public attention was thrown to Nord Stream event? If we would have this daily on the daily emissions, maybe we will reach our target sooner. We tried to understand what happened and what were the true emissions coming out of this event. And it took us 60 scientists out of 29 teams, research teams all over the world, putting them together in a way on a virtual table, because it was quite challenging to coordinate them all. And we put them together and told them, let's come up with a number. Let's see what's the true number, or how close we can get to a true number. And this will be published. But what I can tell you already is that the number that we found working together with these 29 groups is significantly higher than whatever else was published among the community and the authorities. So look out for this paper. We expect that by January it will be published. And I'm happy to take any questions during the break, so that or now, I don't know. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Outstanding. Thank you. So I believe we might, if you don't mind, we might have a couple of quick questions now.
Fine.
Since
yes.
that was very efficient as well as thorough. Erin.
Thanks. I also just want to flag, I love that you put the Romania study up, because we have the scientist pilot who's the only person I know crazy enough to fly in a 2-seater, 1-engine plane across the Atlantic Ocean, also in the room. So if you want to know who in the room is craziest, Steve Conley's in the back.
Exactly. He was there. He was flying.
Right, the mass balance flight. So also, if you're curious about what those flights look like or what that science looks like, Steve's here. Thanks, Andreea, for the great presentation. I think the most popular question, and maybe we can end on this, when? And I'm sure in the same way everyone wants to know when the rules will be final, everyone wants to know, when will your data be available online, and when, and with what granularity? Like, when do we get to see the data, and what will be in it?
Okay, so Mars data or events will be published, I assume, starting with beginning of next year. This is our target, our aim. And then with the Mars data, we are already working, and I think this is the challenge of making the data understandable for everyone, right? And how we are now up to come up with the solution of the public interface, right? For a scientist, a messy way of data put together is maybe fine, but then making it meaningful, presented for stakeholders or for the broader public needs to be done. And I think this is still work in progress. I assume we will see a first version mid next year. I will not promise anything before. But anyway, if you are interested in any data that we have from our studies or any other work that we have, just reach out to us, and we are happy to share with you information and data. No company data. That's something like the holy grail of not sharing. But then any other scientific results or data, we are happy to share with the community.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thanks again.
Thank you.